He promised her a family and a fortune, then used their child as leverage to take the company. Dear Lord, we thank you for the lessons wrapped in our struggles. May each story remind us to cherish trust, protect love, and find strength in truth. Amen. Welcome to Mr. Favor Tales, where hearts heal and stories speak louder than words. Here, every tale is a doorway to reflection, redemption, and the kind of peace we all crave. If you're new here, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this channel for more soul-stirring stories that speak to the heart and inspire the mind. In 2009, nestled on the outer edge of Seattle, a promising tech hub was blooming quietly, where innovation collided with environmental responsibility. It was a time when startups were chasing clean energy solutions, and government grants were handed out to visionaries who could prove they had both the science and the soul to make a difference. That's where Elena Ramirez met Aiden Walker. Elena wasn't looking for love. She was looking for impact. At just 30 years old, Elena had left behind a comfortable job at an energy consulting firm to pursue her dream of building smarter, cleaner, sustainable battery technology. Her prototypes were gaining quiet attention in academic circles, but investors were hesitant. Not because her work wasn't brilliant, but because Elena wasn't loud about it. She didn't pitch in flashy suits. She didn't sell a lifestyle. She sold results. And then came Aiden. He walked into her demo one rainy afternoon in April, introduced by a friend of a friend, claiming he was just curious about what all the hype was about. He wasn't an engineer. He didn't pretend to be. He said he was a startup strategist, had worked with 2 firms that scaled rapidly and got acquired. He understood operations, scaling, storytelling, and pitching. Everything Elena didn't enjoy. You're the mind, he said, grinning. I'm just the megaphone. It was a joke, but in truth, it was the beginning of a bond that felt natural. They were opposites, but somehow perfectly aligned. Elena was deeply rooted in purpose. Aiden was fueled by vision and charisma. Together, they built a plan. Aiden offered to help her structure a formal pitch deck, secure pre-seed funding, and manage investor relationships. No contracts, just trust. And that's how Arison Technologies was born. A company built in the corner of an old bicycle shop, where laptops were balanced on, milk crates and whiteboards were permanently stained with equations and timelines. They worked through weekends, survived on vending machine coffee and granola bars, and pitched over Zoom calls that lasted until midnight. Elena brought the science. Aiden brought the story. But their chemistry was more than just intellectual. In between pitch meetings and product testing, something changed. One evening, Elena fell asleep at her desk, exhausted after a week of nonstop prep for a clean tech summit. Aiden found her, covered her with his jacket, and quietly cleaned up her notes. The next morning, she woke up to her workstation reorganized, her coffee warm, and a note. The world needs your genius. I'm just grateful to witness it. It was simple, but it cut through her tired heart like light through a cloudy morning. Their love didn't explode like a firework. It grew, like roots underground, deep, slow, and strong. By the time Arison raised its first $500,000 in funding, they were in love, not just with the dream, but with each other. And when Aiden proposed on a quiet Sunday morning in the same bike shop turned office, Elena said yes without hesitation. Their wedding was simple. A backyard affair with close friends, handwritten vows, and a joint promise. We build everything together, no matter how big it gets. That promise became their anthem. They structured the company as CEO founders, each holding 45% of shares, with 10% allocated for future partners and team incentives. There was no prenup, no contracts between them. Aiden laughed when it came up. What are we gonna do? Sue each other over who loves the company more? Elena laughed too. In hindsight, she would remember that line often, with tears in her eyes. Arison grew faster than anyone anticipated. Within 2 years, they had 3 patents pending and a growing team of engineers, marketers, and legal consultants. Their battery design was lightweight, rechargeable under solar exposure, and durable in extreme climates. Military contracts were circling. Renewable energy groups wanted exclusivity. Aiden's pitch decks were electric, and Elena's tech was airtight. They became a power couple in every sense. At speaking engagements, they introduced each other with pride. Elena is the smartest person I've ever met. And I'm lucky she said yes, twice. To me and to this crazy vision. She's the reason we're still standing, Elena would say, pointing to Aiden. I build, he bridges. Behind closed doors, they still had disagreements. Aiden wanted to pursue faster growth, more media appearances, more outside partnerships. Elena was slower, careful, unwilling to let ethics slide for quick wins. But they compromised, at least for a while. And then Elena got pregnant. The pregnancy wasn't planned, but it wasn't unwelcome either. Elena cried the day she saw the test. Aiden knelt beside her, kissed her hand, and whispered, "We're building a family now. The real legacy." They were 33 and finally taking a breath. Elena took partial maternity leave, working from home during trimesters 2 and 3. The team celebrated the news. Aiden bought a house, a real one, not a fixer-upper, not a rental, a forever home. Their daughter Isabel Grace Walker was born on a snowy morning, 3 weeks early, and every second of her arrival changed them. Aiden looked at Isabel like she was stardust. Elena, weak but smiling, saw the future in her daughter's eyes. They had it all. Or so it seemed. Elena returned to work 3 months postpartum. She was tired, sleep-deprived, but ready. But things had changed. Investor meetings were being held without her. Contracts were being signed faster than usual. And when she asked about the new partnership with an overseas distributor, one she hadn't reviewed, Aiden brushed it off. "I didn't want to bother you. You've had your hands full. I handled it." Elena paused. Something about the way he said it, like she was less now, troubled her. More meetings passed without her involvement. Aiden hired a new CFO without consulting her. Elena confronted him. "We agreed. We build together." Aiden's response was smooth, but sharp. "We're parents now. I can't afford for things to fall behind because you're juggling diapers and deadlines." It stung, not because it was cruel, but because it was dismissive. Strategic. Elena looked at her daughter, only 5 months old, sleeping peacefully in her arms that night. And for the first time she wondered if Aiden still saw her as a partner, or just a mother. 2 years after Isabel's birth, Arison Technologies was at the height of its momentum. With government grants, an international partnership in Singapore, and a pipeline of pre-orders from energy startups across the US, the company was being hailed as a quiet giant in the clean tech world. From the outside, it was a perfect storm of success. But for Elena, something felt off. It started with a legal packet from one of their patent attorneys. Elena had requested an update on a new design patent for their solar, adaptive battery model, one she had developed over 18 months. But when the documents arrived, her name was missing from the registration. She frowned. It was signed under Arison Technologies, yes, but the author and inventor section listed Aiden Walker, sole filing partner. Elena scanned the lines again, her pulse quickening. She wasn't even listed as a CEO inventor. Was it a mistake? She emailed the firm. The response was polite but vague. All documents were filed per instruction, and with executive signature authority granted by the CEO, Mr. Walker. If there is a discrepancy, we advise resolving it internally before escalating to IP dispute. Elena sat there for a full minute, stunned. It couldn't be real. She called Aiden immediately. "Hey babe," he said cheerfully. "You caught me between calls. What's up?" Elena jumped in. "Why is your name the only one listed on the new solar patent?" Silence. Then the hum of shifting papers on his end. "It's just temporary," he said smoothly. "Legal suggested we file with one name to speed things up, avoid co-authorship delays. You know how the system can be, but that's our design," she replied. "I developed the schematic. You didn't even—" "Elena," he interrupted gently. "Don't do this. You're making it a thing. It's just paperwork." She wanted to believe him. So badly. But something deep inside, that same instinct that helped her catch design flaws in prototypes, told her this wasn't an oversight. It was a move. At home, life was quieter, less joyful. Aiden was often late. Isabel missed dinner with him more nights than not. Elena handled bedtime routines alone, stories, brushing teeth, midnight wake-ups from bad dreams. When she gently mentioned the distance, Aiden always brought it back to her. "You've been cold since you got back to work. The tension isn't just on my side, Elena. I'm trying to be present. But you act like every decision I make is some attack. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't slam doors. But he made her question her reactions, her memory. He'd pat her arm and say, "You're tired, love. Let's not fight in front of Isabel." She began keeping notes in a journal. Timestamps, conversations, changes in company protocol, shifts in equity structure. She felt crazy for doing it, but something told her she needed a record. A map. A voice that wouldn't get lost in gaslight. The next shock came at a quarterly board update. Arison had just secured a $3.5 million Series B funding round. Elena should have been elated, except she hadn't even seen the pitch deck. It had gone out to investors without her review or signature. Aiden explained it to the team as streamlining the process. He thanked Elena for her quiet genius behind the scenes, praised her maternal multitasking, and introduced a new COO, a man named Lyle Harding, a former finance executive from Chicago. Lyle shook Elena's hand with a tight smile. "Big fan of your early work," he said. "Early?" That night, Elena opened their shared company Dropbox folder and found she no longer had edit access to half the executive files. Over the next few weeks, she began piecing things together. Aiden had been reassigning responsibilities to new hires, all loyal to him, not to their shared vision. Legal documents had been altered, replacing joint decision-making clauses with acting CEO privileges. A quiet power of attorney clause had been filed, weeks after Isabel's birth, granting Aiden sole signing authority in case of family emergency, absence, or operational urgency. It was a clause she had signed, late at night, half asleep with a crying baby in her arms. She had trusted him, and he had waited, slowly shifting the tides until she was no longer co-captain of the ship they built. Now, she was just on board, but not in charge. The final breaking point came during Isabel's preschool admission process. The school required confirmation of both parents for high-profile applicants. Elena had filled out all the forms, added Aiden's details, and listed herself as primary point of contact. But when she arrived for Isabel's orientation, she was told there was a revision. "Your husband submitted an updated form this morning," the administrator said. "He's listed as sole financial guardian and primary decision-maker." Elena blinked. "That's not right. I filled those out weeks ago." The administrator looked apologetic. "I'm sorry, but this is what we have on file now." He presented documents backing it up. "From your family trust." Family trust? They never finalized one. Her hands trembled. That night, she confronted Aiden. "Why did you change Isabel's school paperwork without telling me?" He barely looked up from his laptop. "I made it easier. They needed clarity. One name. I'm paying the tuition anyway." "You don't do that without asking me." "Elena," he said slowly, "you've been emotional lately. You're running on nerves. I'm just trying to make things easier. For all of us." Her eyes locked with his. "You used our daughter to make a move," she said quietly. "And you think I won't fight back because I love her too much to cause a scene?" Aiden closed his laptop. The smile he gave her wasn't cruel, but it was calm. Measured. "That's not what I said. But you're right about one thing. You won't cause a scene. Because if you do, you lose her." Elena sat in Isabel's room that night, watching her sleep under a soft white blanket with cartoon stars. She remembered the early days, when Aiden held her and whispered dreams about building a family, raising their child with joy, sharing a life where everything would be 50-50ths. Now, that promise lay in ruins. He hadn't yelled. He hadn't hit her. He hadn't even cheated. He'd simply outmaneuvered her, quietly, legally, with every document, every meeting, every leverage point. And now, Isabel, the daughter Elena had birthed and loved with every breath, was the pawn he used to secure the company. Her tears fell silently. She picked up her journal and wrote 3 words in bold across the page. "He planned this." Have you ever trusted someone so deeply, only to watch them weaponize your love against you? Let us know in the comments. Your story may help someone else, and if this story is touching your soul, please tap that like button, share, and subscribe. You never know who may need to hear this today. Elena had never felt so powerless, not even in the early startup days when money was tight, or in the lonely hours of postpartum fatigue. What made this different was the knowledge that this betrayal had been engineered, not by an outside force, but by the man who once swore to build everything with her. But she wasn't going to collapse. Not for Aiden, not for Arison, and certainly not for Isabel. She took a weekend off, her first in months, and drove with Isabel to her childhood home in Fremont, California. Her mother, Gloria Ramirez, still lived in the cozy two-bedroom house where Elena grew up. Gloria was a retired biology teacher, practical and kind, always knowing when to speak and when to just listen. Elena hadn't planned to open up. But one night, while Isabel was asleep in the guest room and the two women sat on the porch sipping tea, the words tumbled out. She told her everything. The shifted shares, the school forms, the contracts, the isolating silence, the slow erasure. Gloria said nothing for a long time. Then she leaned forward and asked softly, "Do you have proof?" That question jolted Elena, because yes, she did. The journal, the file trail, the emails she had quietly BCC'd to herself, voice memos from meetings where Aiden had glossed over major decisions, even screenshots of file permissions changing. "Good," Gloria said. "You might not be a lawyer, but you were raised by a woman who taught forensic science for 30 years. She smiled. "Now, you build a case." Back in Seattle, Elena returned to work with a new mask, calm, observant, quiet. But inside, she was planning. She booked a consultation with a corporate attorney, Maya Ellison, under her maiden name. The meeting was held in a cafe 30 minutes outside town. Maya, sharp-eyed and meticulous, listened for 45 minutes without interrupting. Then she said, "You're not crazy. You've been strategically phased out. It's textbook. I've seen this before, not often between spouses, but in corporate disputes. All the time." Elena leaned in. "What can I do? You've already done more than most. You've documented everything. But if you want leverage, we need to act before he tightens things further. We request discovery, challenge the filings, freeze any transfer of family assets." "What about Isabel?" Elena asked. "He's already hinting at custody issues." Maya nodded. "Then we bring in a family lawyer too, and fast." Elena hesitated. "If I fight him, I could lose everything. He'll go scorched earth. He'll make it seem like I'm unstable. And if you stay silent," Maya said evenly, "you'll lose anyway, just slower." Elena began identifying who at Arison still respected her, or at least hadn't been fully bought into Aiden's narrative. She found two. Tara Ling, one of the senior engineers, had been hired during the company's earlier years and remained quietly loyal. One afternoon, Tara pulled Elena aside. "I don't know what's going on between you and Aiden," she whispered, "but I've seen some strange protocol changes. Files disappearing, meetings happening behind locked doors. If you ever need me, I'm here." The second was Luis Tron, a project manager who overheard a meeting where Aiden referred to Elena as a legacy figurehead. Luis was furious. "They wouldn't even have Arison if not for your algorithms," he told her. "You're not a figurehead. You're the frame." Elena smiled for the first time in days. Meanwhile, Aiden began changing his behavior at home. He was suddenly sweeter, more present, planning family dinners, leaving flowers on the table, offering to take Isabel to school. He was trying to reassert emotional control, even as his legal grip was already firm. "I just miss us," he said one evening, handing her a glass of wine. "Let's not let the business ruin the family." Elena stared at him. The man who filed legal power of attorney over her name. The man who lied about their daughter's school forms. The man who stole her company in slow motion. She didn't drink the wine. Instead, she said quietly, "What are you most afraid of losing, Aiden?" He paused. "What do you mean? The company? Your image? Or Isabel?" His face tightened, just for a second. Then the charm returned. "I'm not losing anything," he said. "We're stronger than ever." She nodded. And that night, she moved her original journal and all evidence files to a secure cloud drive, locked under two-factor authentication, with copies sent to Maya and her mother. 2 weeks later, Aiden was served. A joint legal petition filed by Elena's team to freeze asset restructuring within Arison until a CO founder review could be conducted, to challenge the patent authorship on 2 of the company's major technologies, and to begin custody mediation citing coercive behavior and emotional manipulation. Aiden was livid. He stormed into their home office. "You're suing me? Are you out of your mind?" Elena stood firm. "You didn't leave me a choice. You're destroying the company. You destroyed it the moment you cut me out and used our child to do it." He glared at her. "This will get ugly. Then you should have thought about that when you made it personal." For the first time in months, Elena didn't flinch. Their daughter, now 4, noticed the tension. She asked more questions. Why Daddy slept in the guest room now? Why Mommy went to meetings with new people? Why everyone spoke softly around her? Elena sat down one evening and told Isabel the gentlest version of the truth. "Mommy and Daddy love you very much, but sometimes even people who love each other make mistakes. We're trying to fix them. We're trying to protect you." Isabel nodded, in the innocent way children do when they sense something bigger than words. She curled into Elena's arms. "Promise, you won't go away," she whispered. Elena kissed her forehead. "Never, not for anything." The day of their first hearing, Elena stood in front of the courthouse in a soft gray coat, holding Isabel's hand. Aiden approached from the opposite side of the steps, flanked by 2 attorneys in crisp suits. He wore no tie, just a power blue shirt and that familiar confident smirk. For a moment, Elena saw the man she once loved, and the stranger he had become. Then she squeezed Isabel's hand and walked through the doors. This wasn't about revenge. This was about truth and protection. The first part of the legal battle focused on custody rights. Aiden's team pushed hard, presenting carefully curated narratives. Elena was overworked, emotionally unstable after childbirth, and inconsistent with parenting schedules. Aiden, in contrast, was presented as the structured parent, the provider, the one who had created a financial future for Isabel. They presented photos, schedules, emails where Elena had missed daycare pickup once, due to a board meeting, as if it were a pattern. But Elena's team came prepared. Maya called 3 character witnesses: Isabel's teacher, a former nanny, and Gloria, Elena's mother, who testified with firm grace. "My daughter built a company while raising a child. She didn't choose to be sidelined. She was pushed." Maya also presented emails showing Aiden changing school forms behind Elena's back, and financial documents indicating the family trust had been structured without Elena's knowledge. The judge leaned forward. Was this signed by both parents? Aiden's lawyer spoke carefully. "It was signed under emergency executive authority, per power of attorney guidelines." Elena raised her voice, just enough. "That clause was slipped into paperwork when I was recovering from childbirth." Gasps rippled from the small crowd. The judge nodded solemnly and instructed both parties to return the next week with full documentation of joint parental decision-making. Outside the courtroom, Aiden confronted Elena in the hallway. "You think this helps Isabel? Dragging our names through the mud?" Elena didn't blink. "She deserves to know one of us stood up for the truth." "You don't understand the game, Elena. This isn't about feelings. This is business. You're turning our company into collateral. You turned our child into leverage." They stared at each other, former lovers, now legal adversaries. The second battlefront was about credit. Elena's legal team submitted testimony from engineers and internal emails that clearly indicated she had invented the dual-phase solar conductivity model that powered Arison's flagship product. They included timestamps, code commits, and drafts, all linked to her work history. Aiden countered that it had been a collaborative process, and as CEO, he had every right to file under the company's name. Maya responded coldly. "Filing under the company's name is one thing. Filing under your personal name, removing the rightful CEO inventor, and converting it to private equity, that's fraud." The judge ordered an interim injunction on the patent, no further licensing or monetization until a joint authorship review was completed. It was a win, not a final victory, but a crack in Aiden's armor. What Elena didn't expect came during a private mediation session. Isabel, though only 4, had been interviewed by a child specialist as part of the custody evaluation. The report came back with a simple note. Child expresses anxiety when routines change suddenly. Describes Daddy's house as busy. Describes Mommy's house as safe. It broke Aiden's narrative. His team fell back into PR cleanup. They proposed shared custody, under the condition that Elena withdraw her challenge to the company's current structure. But Elena wasn't just after time with Isabel. She wanted the truth acknowledged and her integrity restored. 2 days before the next court date, Aiden came to Elena's home unannounced. He stood on the porch like a man unsure whether to knock or walk away. She opened the door. 5 minutes, he said. She nodded and stepped aside. He sat at the dining table, rubbing his palms together. Do you remember that first night in the shop? He asked. You were soldering those wires and cursing under your breath because I spilled coffee on your board. Elena didn't smile, and you held up a hairdryer to fix it. Told me it was temporary innovation. That's what you called it. We built something, Aiden said, his voice low. You and me, and I ruined it. He paused. But I did it because I was scared. Elena finally sat. Of what? Of being replaced, of not being enough, of being a man who peaked too early. You were rising, and I didn't know how to hold it. She looked at him. So you decided to own me instead. He nodded, slowly. For once, not defending himself. I can't fix it. Not all of it. But maybe I can give something back. The next morning in court, Aiden's legal team submitted an unexpected addendum. A revised company charter, reinstating Elena as co-founder and chief innovation officer. A restructured patent application with joint authorship. A signed custody plan granting equal parenting time, with Elena as the primary decision-maker for schooling and health. The judge raised an eyebrow. Elena's team requested a 1-day recess to review. When Maya turned to Elena in the hallway, she whispered. He blinked. You broke the wall. But Elena shook her head. No. He's just shifting strategy. It's still chess. He's just using a softer hand. If you've ever fought to reclaim your voice, or been silenced in love or business, this story is for you. Drop a comment, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, so others can find hope through the fire. The temporary legal wins gave Elena something she hadn't felt in months, space to breathe. But peace? That still felt far away. Maya, her attorney, called one morning with an idea. If you want to get out clean, we leverage the injunction. You offer Aiden a buyout. Let him keep the company in name, but you walk with your full patents, equity share, and co-founder recognition. That, plus custody terms, and we seal it. Elena hesitated. You're saying, walk away from Arison? You'd walk away from his version of Arison, Maya clarified. But you'd own your work, free and clear. And with it, you could build again. Elena sat with the idea. She had always dreamed of legacy, not fame, not headlines, just impact. She imagined building a second company, one she could lead without compromise, a quiet revolution. But could she walk away from the name she helped build? From the place she gave her 20s, her love, her child's story? That night, she wrote a letter. She didn't send it, not yet. But she wrote it, as if it were the last thing she'd ever say to him. Aiden, I'm not fighting you anymore. I'm fighting for what's left of me. You once said we were building a legacy. But somewhere along the way, you decided the legacy needed only one name, yours. I don't need your apologies. I don't need your wine, or your dinners, or your public performances of remorse. I need my name back. I need our daughter safe. And I need you to understand this. You didn't break me. You freed me. Elena. The next mediation session felt different. There were fewer raised voices, fewer accusations. Aiden sat across the table from Elena, for once not with a smirk, but with a kind of resignation, maybe even guilt. Maya slid the terms forward. Elena would relinquish her operational title at Arison. She would retain 50% of her intellectual property rights related to her original innovations. She would walk away with a $6.4 million equity buyout, paid over 24 months. Custody of Isabel would be 50/50ths, with Elena maintaining primary authority over education and health, and a no-coercion clause enforced in all future legal actions. Aiden didn't argue. He signed. When the pen left the paper, Elena didn't smile. She simply exhaled. A breath 2 years in the making. The press release was carefully worded. Arison Technologies announces a leadership restructure. CO founder Elena Ramirez departs to explore independent innovation initiatives. We thank her for her invaluable contributions. There was no mention of the court battles. No whispers of betrayal. Just polite corporate language. But those who knew, they knew. Within weeks, Arison's stockholders began asking questions. Some investors had come because of Elena's vision. Now they weren't so sure. Meanwhile, Elena released nothing. No blog posts. No exposes. No smear campaigns. She didn't need noise. She needed clarity. Elena set up a routine with Isabel. 2 weeks at mom's, 2 weeks at dad's. Transitions were hard at first. Isabel asked tough questions. Why can't we all live together again? Why does Daddy say you didn't want to stay with us? Elena never answered with bitterness. She simply said, because some people grow in different directions, but love doesn't go away, ever. She never spoke poorly of Aiden, not even once, because she knew that truth outlives silence. And Isabel, as young as she was, felt that. With her settlement, Elena opened a small innovation studio. Not flashy, not loud, just a quiet space in Tacoma, Washington, with 5 engineers and a mission: to build what serves people, not just shareholders. She called it Lunaria Labs, named after the plant that grows quietly in the shadows but shines when the light hits just right. Investors approached. Elena declined most of them. She wanted control. Not for pride, but for integrity. She paid her team fairly, took care of mental health, offered parenting leave policies that weren't just written, but honored. And within a year, her lab produced a new grid storage model that outperformed her original Arison prototype by 18%. No media frenzy, no billboards, just quiet, steady change. Meanwhile, Arison's growth slowed. Aiden struggled to maintain product evolution without Elena's foundational logic. Engineers cycled in and out. Stock dipped slightly. Nothing collapsed. He still looked good in interviews, still talked clean, but internally, the magic was gone. He had the name, but not the soul. And sometimes, after long investor calls and lonely office nights, he stared at the old photo of the two of them, smiling in that old bike shop, and wondered what would have happened if he'd chosen love over control. The real triumph came one afternoon, 2 years after the final mediation. Elena was invited to speak at a youth STEM summit. When she arrived, she saw Isabel, now 6, sitting in the front row, clutching a notepad with stars on the cover. Elena walked to the podium and smiled. "I want to tell you a story," she began, "about how sometimes the things we build don't last. But who we become in the process, that's what matters." She spoke not of betrayal or boardrooms, but of resilience, of walking away to walk forward, of fighting for your voice even when the world calls you crazy. When she stepped down, Isabel ran up and hugged her. "Mommy," she whispered, "I want to build things like you." Elena smiled through tears. Then, "I've already won." 3 years had passed. In that time, Elena Ramirez didn't become a billionaire. She didn't dominate headlines. She didn't seek revenge. What she became was whole. Lunaria Labs was thriving in its own quiet lane. It hadn't gone public, hadn't chased explosive valuations, and hadn't compromised on values. But it had helped retrofit 47 small towns in the Midwest with sustainable battery storage, partnered with a nonprofit to bring solar-powered learning stations to rural schools in Arizona, won 2 environmental innovation grants, 1 national, 1 international. And for Elena, the most powerful achievement was building a workplace where integrity wasn't negotiable and everyone's voice was heard, especially women who had once been dismissed. Each morning she walked into her office not with a crown, but with calm. She had lost an empire, but found peace with power. Aiden kept his 50% parenting schedule, and he honored it. The court's conditions were strict, and Maya had ensured there was 0 room for manipulation. Aiden was a good father when he showed up. He took Isabel to soccer games, taught her to ride a bike, even helped with science fair models. But he knew better than to cross the legal boundaries again. Elena didn't spy. She didn't interfere. She simply parented with love, on her time, and stayed the course. The bitterness had faded, not because she had forgotten, but because forgiveness was her own path forward. It was at a gala fundraiser for women in STEM. Elena had been invited as an honoree. Aiden was there as a guest of one of the sponsors. They hadn't spoken face-to-face in almost a year. After the ceremony, As she stepped outside to make a call, she found him by the valet circle, leaning on a stone railing. "You still wear that same calm," he said without looking at her. Elena's voice was soft. "You still chase storms?" He turned. "I read about the Iowa project." "That's beautiful work. We're just getting started," she replied. He smiled faintly. "Do you hate me?" She paused, then said, "I grieved you. That was enough." Aiden nodded, swallowing something heavy. "You made it. Without me." Elena met his eyes. "No, Aiden. I made it in spite of you." He looked down, then quietly said, "I'm glad you did." And for the first time in years she believed he meant it. On her 9th birthday, Isabel handed Elena a handmade card. Inside, folded neatly, was a short letter. "Dear Mommy, I don't understand all the grown-up stuff yet, but I know this. I feel strong when I'm around you. I feel safe. When I grow up, I want to be like you, not because you're smart or brave or famous, but because you don't give up. I love you forever, Isabel." Elena cried, not because she was sad, but because everything she fought for had just been confirmed. This story isn't just about betrayal. It's about how control can disguise itself as protection, how silence becomes a weapon when used by someone you trust, and how a woman, underestimated and unguarded, can rebuild, stronger, wiser, and freer. Aiden thought love was ownership. Elena proved that love, real love, is respect, shared power, and sacrifice without strings. They both lost something, but only one of them found themselves again. In the final scene of this story, picture Elena back at her home office, sitting by the window, sipping tea. Isabel plays with building blocks behind her. The sun is setting. Elena flips through her journal, the one she started back when she was losing everything. She stops on a page that reads, "When you have nothing left, build with your truth." And with a smile, she turns the page. Because her story, and maybe yours too, isn't over, not even close. Elena never planned to be a public figure. She preferred labs to lights, results over recognition. But in a world where reputation shapes reality, the truth sometimes demands a stage. And soon, Elena would find herself in the middle of a scandal she didn't start, but would be forced to finish. It began with a whisper on tech blogs, then a tweet storm, then full headlines. Whistleblower alleges data tampering at Arison Technologies. At first, Elena didn't react. She hadn't worked at Arison in nearly 3 years. She had no stake, no comment, but the story wouldn't fade. A former lead engineer at Arison had anonymously leaked emails suggesting Aiden's team had manipulated product efficiency data to win a Department of Energy contract. Reports surfaced that older testing models, ones based on Elena's original designs, were being falsified to inflate metrics. It quickly became a federal concern. And suddenly, Elena's name was in the headlines again, this time caught in a storm she had already left behind. Her assistant at Lunaria Labs entered her office one morning looking nervous. "You've got 14 interview requests. CNN, Tech Daily, Wired, even Forbes." Elena shook her head. "I don't comment on Arison. They're all framing you as the silent co-founder, the one who walked before the ship started leaking." Elena looked out the window. She didn't want fame. She didn't need credit. But the story was being shaped without her voice. Again. So she picked one outlet. Just one. A podcast hosted by a woman she trusted, an independent journalist named Danielle Sharp, known for thoughtful, ethical storytelling. The episode was titled, "The Woman Who Walked Away Before It Burned." Danielle kept it respectful. "You left Arison under legally complex circumstances. Now it's facing allegations that stem from decisions made after your exit. Do you feel vindicated?" Elena paused. "No. I feel heartbroken, because a company we built to do good became something else, and it didn't have to be this way." "Do you think this culture of secrecy began after you left?" "No. I think it started when decisions stopped being shared, when control replaced collaboration." "You mean Aiden?" Elena didn't flinch. "I mean, anyone who thinks power is more important than people." The episode went viral within 48 hours. 2 days later, she received a call from an unknown number. She let it go to voicemail. "Elena, it's me. I don't know if you've seen what's going on, but It's bad. I didn't know some of this. I trusted the wrong people. I might lose the company. I wanted you to hear it from me. I'm sorry." She didn't call back, not because she was cold, but because some doors, once closed, must stay closed. That same week, she got another call, this time from a state senator, someone who had followed her quiet work at Lunaria Labs and wanted her help drafting a new clean tech transparency bill. They needed voices who had seen both sides, brilliance and betrayal. Elena agreed, quietly, powerfully, not to make noise, but to make change. Isabel was now 10, smart, observant, kind. She had grown up watching her mother lose publicly, but rebuild privately. One night, while they cooked dinner together, she asked, "Mom, why didn't you just try to ruin Dad back then?" Elena smiled sadly. "Because hurting him wouldn't have healed me. I wanted something bigger than revenge." "Like what?" "Freedom, peace, legacy." Isabel thought for a moment. "I think you got all three." Months later, Aiden was forced to step down as CEO of Arison. Not because of Elena, but because of his own team turning on him, filing internal complaints, producing audit logs showing years of mismanagement and altered projections. His public statement was polite. "I'm proud of what we built. I'll be stepping back to let new leadership guide the next chapter." But behind the scenes, Aiden knew this was the price of his control. Elena didn't celebrate. She simply folded the newspaper and moved on with her day. She was invited to give a guest lecture at her alma mater. Her topic? The difference between building a company and building a life. Her opening words stunned the hall. "I once built a company with the man I loved, and then I had to survive the moment that same man used our child and my work to erase me. This isn't a cautionary tale. This is a blueprint for rebuilding." The students listened. Some cried. Some recorded every word. She finished with this: "Power built on silence is a house of cards. Integrity, that's the foundation that never shakes." Elena had become a symbol, not because she chased it, but because she lived it. What started as quiet resilience had now positioned her as a national voice. In ethical innovation, female leadership, and corporate accountability, the media called it the Elena effect. But for her, it was just doing the next right thing. It came on a Thursday. A letter stamped with the seal of the United States. The president's office had been watching Elena's quiet rise, her clean tech reforms, her refusal to vilify Aiden publicly, her testimony before Congress on ethical co-founding. Now, they wanted her to join the National Commission for Sustainable Innovation, a newly formed group tasked with shaping America's next generation of green energy policy. She read the letter 3 times before calling Maya. "I never wanted this," she whispered. "That's exactly why you deserve it," Maya replied. The news hit the media the next day. Former Arison co-founder appointed to Federal Innovation Council. Aiden read it in silence from his office, smaller now, modest. Arison had survived, but only as a shell of what it once was. He still had money, still had power in certain rooms, but the narrative had shifted. And now, Elena was no longer just the woman he wronged. She was the standard others measured integrity against. He thought about calling her. Again. But what could he say now? He closed the article, opened a blank document, and wrote a resignation letter. For good this time. That weekend, Isabel drew a picture of her mother in front of the White House. Stick figures, crayons, and sparkles. But the caption, "My mommy builds light." Elena placed it on her nightstand. She had received awards, accolades, even checks with more zeros than she'd ever imagined. But nothing compared to that little drawing. Elena stepped onto the stage at the National Clean Energy Forum in Washington, D.C., greeted by a standing ovation. She adjusted the mic. 10 years ago, I was soldering battery wires on a garage table, wondering if anyone would ever take me seriously. 5 years ago, I was fighting to keep my name on the work I helped build. Today, I'm here not as someone who conquered, but as someone who endured. And let me tell you, endurance is not weakness, it's wisdom grown in fire. Innovation without ethics is just ambition with a suit on. We must do better, build better, love better. The applause didn't stop for nearly 2 minutes. 2 months after Elena's appointment, the final blow landed. Arison's largest government contract was pulled after an independent audit confirmed data manipulation during Aiden's leadership. The board dissolved. Remaining assets were bought out by a European firm. The name Arison Technologies was retired. No one celebrated. Elena simply nodded and said to her assistant, "Let's make sure our interns know why leadership matters." In 5th grade, Isabel was assigned a project. Write about someone who inspires you. She wrote about her mom. And at the presentation, standing in front of classmates and parents, she said, "My mom is the strongest person I know, not because she won a lot, but because she kept showing up when it was hard. She teaches me that you don't have to yell to be powerful, you just have to stand." Tears ran down Elena's face, and she realized this was legacy, not logos, not titles, not buildings, but a child who saw truth modeled at home. At a women's leadership summit in Chicago, Elena closed with a message. To every woman who's been erased, manipulated, or made to feel like her, genius must be filtered through someone else's ambition. I see you. You don't owe anyone your silence, and you don't need a stage to be significant. Your presence is your power. Build with love, guard with wisdom, and walk away when staying costs you your soul. If you've ever rebuilt yourself after being broken by someone you trusted, if you've ever chosen truth over comfort, if you've ever walked away from something you helped build just to protect your peace, you are not alone. Drop your story in the comments, like this video, share it with someone who needs strength today. And don't forget to subscribe to Mr. Favor Tales, where every story reminds you of who you really are. Elena was in the middle of reviewing grant proposals when her assistant knocked. "There's a visitor asking to see you. No appointment. Says it's urgent." She looked up. "Who is it?" The assistant hesitated. "Aiden Walker." Elena stared for a moment, then set her pen down. "Tell him I'll give him 10 minutes. He stood in the hallway outside her glass office, the same man but smaller somehow. The edge was gone. The ego, too. He looked tired, like someone who had finally realized he'd been running toward a finish line that no longer existed. She opened the door. "You've got 10. He stepped in slowly, carrying nothing but a manila envelope. "I won't waste your time. I'm not here to talk about the past." Elena folded her arms. "Then talk about now. I've stepped away from the industry. For good. I'm taking a job at a private consultancy in Vermont. Quiet work, low profile." "Okay." He paused. "But before I go, I need to do something. For Isabel, and for myself." He slid the envelope across her desk. "It's a letter. For her. You can read it first. Decide if she should see it." Elena didn't touch it. "You could have mailed it." "No," he said, gently. "I needed to see you. Not for approval, just to acknowledge." "Acknowledge what?" "That I took something that wasn't mine, and that you built something I couldn't destroy, even when I tried." He exhaled. "I'm not asking for a seat at your table. I just wanted you to know. I see it now, all of it." Elena nodded slowly. "And what do you want me to do with that?" "Nothing," he said. "Just hear it." He turned to leave, then paused. "You didn't just survive me, Elena. You surpassed me. That's your legacy." And then he walked away. That night, after Isabel was asleep, Elena opened the envelope. Aiden's handwriting was unfamiliar, like someone trying to write without ego. "Isabel, by the time you read this, you'll be older. Maybe old enough to understand that even people who love you can make terrible mistakes. I hurt your mother, not just in a moment, but in a long, slow way that took years to repair. And I might never fully repair it, but I'm trying to become a man who owns his consequences. You don't have to forgive me, but I hope you grow up knowing that your strength didn't come from me winning. It came from her surviving. You are everything we ever hoped for, and I hope you carry her fire. Love always, Dad." Elena folded the letter gently, tears streaming down her face, not for what had been lost, but for what was finally understood. A few days later, she sat with Isabel on the back porch. "I have a letter for you," she said softly. "From your dad." Isabel's eyes widened. "Did he write it just now?" "He did. I read it first. I think you're ready." Isabel took the letter and read in silence. Then she looked up. "He really gets it now, doesn't he?" Elena nodded. Sometimes understanding comes late. I'm not mad at him, Isabel said. But I don't want him to think everything's okay either. That's fair, Elena replied. You can love someone and still choose boundaries. Like you did? Exactly like I did. They sat together, watching the sun dip behind the trees. At a leadership conference the following spring, Elena was asked to speak on reconciliation and leadership. She ended her keynote with this: People often ask me if I forgave the man who tried to erase my work, the man I once loved, the father of my child. And here's my answer. I did forgive him, not to heal him, but to heal me. Forgiveness is not forgetting. It's remembering without rage. It's looking at the scar and saying, you no longer own me. With Aiden now gone, and Lunaria Labs expanding across 4 cities, Elena turned her focus to mentorship. She launched the Ramirez Women's Institute for Ethical Innovation, a hybrid accelerator and leadership bootcamp for young women in STEM. Her first cohort had 12 girls from across the country, from underfunded schools, single-parent homes, immigrant families. She watched them grow, challenge, speak, and she saw bits of herself in each one, not just her intellect, but her resilience. Isabel, now 12, began her own journey, tinkering with robotics, shadowing. Elena at meetings, asking the hard questions at the dinner table. One evening she asked, if you could go back, would you erase all of it, even meeting Dad? Elena thought carefully. No, because then I wouldn't have you. I wouldn't have Lunaria. I wouldn't be who I am now. So the pain was worth it. It wasn't fair. It wasn't right. But it shaped me. So, you don't hate him anymore? No, baby. I'm free from that now. Have you ever had to forgive someone who never fully said, I'm sorry? Have you ever healed in silence, then risen in strength? Your story is worthy too. Drop a comment below. Like if this story made you reflect. Share it with someone who needs clarity. Subscribe to Mr. Favor Tales, where healing has a voice. Time has a way of revealing what press releases cannot, and in Elena's case, it wasn't her story that changed. It was the world's willingness to listen. Lunaria Labs had grown, not explosively but intentionally. It now had satellite offices in Denver, Oakland, Raleigh, and Minneapolis, each one led by women Elena had mentored from scratch, women who weren't just engineers or executives, but builders of culture. The company had launched 6 public tech solutions, ranging from disaster recovery, storage kits, to solar-integrated community hubs in low-income regions. It had never gone public. Elena refused acquisition offers from 4 major firms. My legacy isn't for sale, she told them. She was now listed among Forbes's 100 Women of the Decade. MIT gave her an honorary doctorate. Her TEDx talk on the cost of a clean conscience reached 14 million views. But none of that changed her rhythm. She still worked from the same desk, still walked Isabel to school when she was home, still mentored 2 undergraduates every semester, still took 1 full day off each week to just breathe. Fame is an echo, she once told her staff. It fades, but purpose stays loud inside you. Then came the letter. This time, it wasn't a media feature or awards ceremony. It was from the Nobel Foundation. Elena had been nominated for the Nobel Prize in Economic Sciences for her innovation in ethical enterprise, models and inclusive green energy systems that disrupted not just industries, but ideologies. Her hands trembled as she read the final line. Nominated by Isabel Grace Walker, her daughter, now 18, now a freshman at Stanford, now a woman in her own right. Months earlier, as part of a fellowship application, Isabel had been asked to write about a leader who changed your worldview. She didn't choose a president, or a tech icon, or an author. She wrote about her mother. Then, with Maya's help, she prepared a formal letter to the Nobel Committee, detailing Elena's journey not just as a professional, but as a woman who transformed betrayal into blueprints, not for sympathy, but for systemic change. She didn't throw a party. She didn't post on social media. She closed her office door and cried. Then she called Isabel. I'm proud of the work, Elena said, voice trembling. But you are the award I never saw coming. Isabel laughed. Then I guess I win too. The announcement sent ripples, not because it was Elena, but because it reminded everyone that quiet power eventually roars. Former colleagues wrote tributes. Industry blogs revisited the Arison split, now with clarity and praise. Young founders cited Elena's playbook on building without compromising. And behind the scenes, Aidan Walker, now fully retired and living in Vermont, sent a handwritten letter, not to Elena this time, but to Isabel. You were right to nominate her. She didn't just change tech, she changed me. When the time came, dressed in a simple navy gown, her mother Gloria on one side and Isabel on the other, Elena stepped onto the Nobel stage. She looked into the crowd and began. They said I'd never succeed without shouting, that I had to scream to be heard. But I didn't raise my voice. I raised my values. I lost a company, a marriage, a part of myself I'll never get back. But I found a greater gain, a truth no contract could touch. We cannot build a better future on stolen blueprints and silenced partners. We build it on equity, on honesty, on collaboration that isn't performative, but transformational. To every woman still building in the shadows, I see you, and one day so will the world. Thunderous applause followed. But it wasn't just for the moment. It was for the years that led to it. That night, Elena walked outside alone, looked up at the stars, and whispered, I'm still me. No cameras, no microphone, no audience, just the voice of a woman who never let loss define her. She had not only survived the betrayal, she had transcended it. This story is not about fame. It's not even about justice. It's about the quiet rebuilding of someone whose trust was used as a weapon. The deliberate choice to rise without dragging others down. And the legacy left behind by those who lead without needing a spotlight. Elena didn't reclaim her power. She rewrote what power could mean. She proved that sometimes the most profound revenge is not revenge at all. It's becoming someone they can never break again. After the Nobel ceremony, Elena returned home not to applause, but to peace. No flashing cameras, no red carpets, just the familiar sound of her front gate creaking, and Isabel laughing on a video call upstairs. That was her real reward. But as it often goes, peace doesn't mean the story is over. A few weeks later, Elena received a letter from a name she hadn't heard in nearly a decade. Sophie Langston. She had been Arison's first operations intern, the one who had brought lunch to meetings, taken notes nobody ever read, and quietly left when the company changed hands. Elena remembered her well, soft-spoken, brilliant, ignored. Now, Sophie was 27, and launching her own startup. Dear Elena, it read, when I was an intern, I watched you every day. I watched how you spoke when people cut you off. I watched how you held your dignity while others claimed your work. I never said anything then. I was scared. But now, I'm building something. A real company. Ethical, sustainable, diverse. I'm doing it right, because you showed me it was possible. If you ever have time, I'd love your guidance, even just 10 minutes. Elena folded the letter and scheduled a Zoom call that same afternoon. That one conversation became a habit. Every month, Elena gave 1 hour to a rising woman founder. No contracts, no charges, no press. She called it the Whisper Circle, a space where future leaders could talk before they were famous, before they were erased, and before anyone taught them that humility meant invisibility. Her only rule? You don't need to shout, you just need to show up. Within a year, the circle had grown to 60 women across 12 countries, building companies, nonprofits, and coalitions. They didn't call her coach. They called her the root system. One evening, she received a video message from Aidan. He didn't ask to meet. He didn't call. He just sent a file titled, "Thank you," and "Goodbye." She hesitated, then pressed play. Hey, Elena. I know we've said most of what there is to say, but I wanted you to see something. He turns the camera to show a simple community center with solar panels. This is my new job. I manage energy solutions for small towns. No pitches, no profits, just purpose. I use some of your early designs, the ones that never made it past beta. I tell the team where they came from. I say your name. I don't pretend anymore. I still carry shame, but I also carry what I learned from you. Thank you for building what I didn't deserve, for surviving me, and for doing more with your peace than I ever did with power. This is my last message. I won't intrude again. Goodbye, Elena. She watched it once, then deleted it, and whispered, "Goodbye, Aiden." Now 19, Isabel came home from college with a choice to make. "I got 2 offers," she said. "One from a legacy firm in D.C. with a huge salary, and one from a tiny energy co-op in Louisiana trying to electrify underdeveloped areas." Elena smiled. "Which one scares you more?" Isabel laughed. "The small one. No title, no money. But it feels right." "Then you already know your answer." Isabel hugged her tightly. "Everything I needed to learn about power, you taught me by letting go of it." On Elena's 50th birthday, her team surprised her. They presented her with a living wall in the Lunaria Labs lobby, covered in moss, orchids, and tiny plaques, each inscribed with the name of a woman Elena had mentored. There were 127 names. Each plaque bore a word they had chosen to describe her influence. Steady, relentless, truth, grace, anchor, builder, and at the very top, in bolder lettering than the rest, was Isabel's plaque. It read, "Mother, to me, and to a movement." Elena wept, not because she felt proud, but because she had given everything away, and somehow had more than she ever imagined. Elena sat alone at her kitchen table one cool November evening, a candle burning beside her, a soft instrumental humming from the other room. Isabel was home from Louisiana for a few days, sleeping now, exhausted. From travel, her hair sprawled across the pillow like when she was 6, and for the first time in years Elena felt something stir in her. Not grief, not regret, but completion. Not because the world had crowned her with titles or trophies, but because her heart no longer craved justice. It had found peace. That night, she did something she'd never done. She wrote a letter. She titled it simply and began, "Dear younger me, you thought love would protect you, that partnership would guarantee peace, that if you were kind enough, smart enough, and patient enough, no one could ever turn against you. I wish I could wrap you in the truth gently, but you need to hear it plain. They will betray you, not with fists, but with contracts, not with screams, but with silence. You'll cry in the dark, holding a child you created together, wondering how he could smile while taking everything from you. You'll lose your title, your name on a building, the team you trained, and still, you will rise, not with fire, but with stillness. You will learn that power is not in control, it's in restraint. You will be underestimated, dismissed, written out, but you'll document everything. You'll build again. You'll name your peace louder than your pain. And the daughter you feared would grow up in confusion, she'll grow into clarity. She'll carry your name into rooms you never entered. She'll nominate you for awards you never sought. One day she'll hold your hand and say, "You showed me how to love without losing myself." And you'll realize, that was the legacy all along. Not the company, not the patents, not the applause, but the woman you became after the war ended. And if you're ever tempted to ask, was it all worth it? I'll answer plainly, yes. Every scar was a sentence in your survival story. Keep walking, keep building, keep believing. You didn't lose yourself. You found her. With love, Elena. She folded the letter, placed it in a small envelope, and tucked it in her journal. The same one she started years ago when the first signs of betrayal surfaced. Now, the last page had been written. But the story? It had only just begun. In the women she mentored, the daughters she raised, the lives she touched. Elena was no longer trying to prove herself. She simply lived in her truth. And that was louder than any courtroom. The next morning, Elena walked the shoreline trail near her home. Clouds, brushing low over the horizon, sea foam kissing her sneakers. She didn't walk fast. She didn't check her phone. She just breathed. And with every step, she whispered the names of the women she had become. Mother, founder, fighter, friend, forgiver, teacher, witness, survivor. And seed planter. She smiled. The world had seen her scars. But now, they'd remember her strength. Maybe this wasn't just Elena's story. Maybe it's yours too. Maybe you've been overlooked, used, rewritten, silenced, discarded. Maybe you've fought wars no one clapped for. But let this story remind you, You can rebuild. You can forgive without surrender. And you can lose what you built and still become more than ever. Because in the end, true power isn't taken. It's chosen. If this journey meant something to you, don't let it end here. Let it live through your voice. Drop a comment. Tell us what you're rising from. Like this story, if it reminded you of your own quiet strength. Share this with someone carrying pain they never deserved. And subscribe to Mr. Favor Tales, where we don't just tell stories. We walk with you through them.